Hello, Dr. E. This is Courtney Lyons, and this is my first course journal video. I've never done anything like this, so I'm really excited, and I'm really enjoying this class so far. It's been a learning journey, and I'm excited to learn more. For this first course journal video, I will be talking about what I believe to be healthy sexuality. So I believe healthy sexuality is sex between a man and a woman within the context of a marriage covenant. I don't believe healthy sexuality to be something that is experienced before marriage, and within marriage I don't believe it to be something that the two parties involved in the marriage experience with anyone else. I believe God designed us anatomically male and female with certain body parts, and that is why I believe that male and female are to be together in marriage. I believe healthy sexuality is to be experienced only in the covenant marriage relationship where two people become one flesh. I believe healthy sexuality is God's design for procreation. I believe that's the way that God created it for humans to procreate. But within that, he also made sex pleasurable for male and female because he created us, he created our bodies. I don't think healthy sexuality is for singles. In 1 Thessalonians 4:3-5, the scriptures say, "For this is the will of God, your sanctification, that you abstain from sexual immorality, that each one of you know how to control his own body in holiness and honor, not in the passions of lust, like the Gentiles who do not know God." I believe God created sex within marriage not just because he's a God of rules or regulations, but because he's a God who's our Father and he knows what is best for us. And that is something to be beautiful within marriage. I think it's a giving of oneself to another, and that is to be given to one person and one person only. And although there is grace for people who have fallen short in this, I know it's what is God's best for his people. We also see Apostle Paul talk about healthy sexuality in 1 Corinthians. He talks about how it's better for people to marry than to burn with passion for one another. And he also talks about how that it's better to be married than to be burning with passion, but yet it's even better still for man to devote himself fully to God. But just how back then and now sexual purity is a big deal, and it's a big deal in God's eyes. The next question I'll address is, what are some of the pros and cons of studying sexuality and using research in the exploration and understanding of sexuality? I think some of the pros of studying sexuality are definitely not only for my own individual life and my own individual sexuality, but I think for others as well. I think whether you are single or married, studying sexuality is important in our world today. With my own generation, I'm 22 years old, and younger generations below me are being raised in a world where all we see in the movies, in the magazines, in the books we're reading, and just walking down the street is that if you don't dress a certain way or act a certain way, then you won't be wanted by a man. And so I think that studying sexuality is extremely crucial, not only for my own understanding, but because I want to be able to help and teach young women one day why purity is important. And not just because it's what God says, but because there are consequences for our actions, and God's best for us is waiting. I think that there's a deeper understanding to sexuality than just wait, and I want to be able to teach people why stay pure and how to stay pure, because we can tell them don't do this just because, but then it's almost like a present that they want to unwrap. But if we give them maybe tools and reasons as to why they want to wait, then hopefully God will empower them to wait. So next, the third question is, what are the differences in the presentations of healthy sexuality between our textbooks and scripture? I think both, here's the two books, this one and this one, so by Kay Arthur and Lauren Winner. These two books really align with the biblical point of view about sex and about sex within marriage. And Winner definitely talks more about chastity and how chastity is God's best for us. But because of her own story and her own background, she's really interested in giving the church especially tools for helping people stay chaste, because it is a hard thing to do. And so she wants the church to get better at, rather than just saying don't do it, really understand why, and really help other people understand why chastity is important. So far, Kay Arthur's book is my absolute favorite. She, everything that she talks about within this book on sex, she backs it up with scripture, and it's incredibly helpful, and it aligns with all of my worldviews with sexuality. And then we see in Carol's book that it's definitely a more worldly point of view. She kind of talks about like sex in history and in other religions, but more relevant to today's world, ignoring biblical point of view. One thing I really love is what Arthur says in her book on page 19. In regards to sexuality, in its hallowed purity, the union of a husband and wife becomes a holy metaphor of the wife God seeks for his son, of the oneness he longs to have with his chosen people, Israel. I love this. Being newly married, there's so much that I'm learning about healthy sexuality and just what God desires that to look like. And it's a beautiful thing in his design. And so I'm really loving all these books. The last thing I'll go over is talking about what has influenced my view of sexuality the most. I grew up in a non-Christian home, and my parents got divorced when I was 8. And my mom, I honestly didn't have a whole lot of interest in it. And I remember a point where my mom took out like a sex ed book with me and told me if I have any questions or anything that she would answer them for me. And I think God's grace has protected me throughout my life. I was saved when I was a freshman in college, and that was 4 years ago now. And I think high school gave me a different point of view on sex, although it was something that friends were doing. It was something that was common, just as it is today. It was normal to have sex before marriage, all those things. And I think now what's shaping my view is my own life. When the church I got involved in, it's called Antioch Church, they have just a tremendous impact on my life and my faith and all the decisions I make, because them teaching the Word, learning the Word, and really seeking God for what His will is for me, for my life, for my sexuality, and just really knowing and trusting that purity before marriage was what He wanted for me. And me and my husband, before we got married, met with our pastor and his wife and submitted our relationship to them, and were held accountable to them. And it really protected us from a lot of things and from premarital sex. And so I think that the church getting involved is key in helping young adults, helping individuals stay pure from something that the enemy will tempt them with. And knowing that it's more than just don't do it. It's because it's what God has best for us. So that's all I have, and you're awesome, Dr. E, and I'm really excited for the rest of this course.